Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. Today, I want to talk about this incredible book, Glimmer by Kimberly Shannon Murphy, and why this book is a must-read for every post-traumatic parent who asks themselves, how can I do this? How can I recover from traumas that have left me feeling so broken and depleted and like my body doesn't belong to me anymore? How do I take that and move forward and parent? But first, if you like this content, if you've had that question yourself, please click subscribe below so that you never miss another episode. So recently, I had the opportunity to speak to Kimberly Shannon Murphy, the author of Glimmer, on the Post Traumatic Parenting podcast to ask her about the backstory behind the book and to really flesh out and deepen some of the concepts in the book. And the episode is fantastic. But what I didn't get to do on that episode is really review the book and talk about why I think this book is such an important book for every post-traumatic parent to read. So first of all, trigger warning, this book is a nonfiction memoir of recovery from childhood sexual abuse and sexual abuse within the family and how it impacted Kimberly Shannon Murphy's life on so many levels, but also how it impacted her ability to become a mother and be comfortable with her parenting skills and abilities. So if that's a topic that you find a little triggering, if you're around small children, this might not be the episode to listen to right now. Be prepared. Same thing with reading the book. I actually read the book and then bought the book in audio and listened to it. And I found that listening to the audio book, I needed to do it while running because the book was bringing up so much adrenaline and so much physical, body, emotional reactions in me that the only way I could really focus on the story, because it is narrated so powerfully by Caitlin Olsen. She does a great job of capturing Kimberly's voice, that I really needed to be moving while I took it in. So both reading the book gave me one whole perspective on it, but then listening to it gave me another whole perspective on it. And speaking to Kimberly on the podcast gave me yet another perspective on it. So let's unpack Glimmer and what is so fantastic about this book. So Kimberly Shannon Murphy, you may be familiar with her work pretty much if you've ever watched a movie where there is a tall actress as the main character, and especially if it's an action movie or a movie that has a lot of stunts in it, you've seen Kimberly Shannon Murphy. She's the person who actually falls off the mountain or actually breaks through the table or actually goes through the windshield of the car, right? Because newsflash, the movie stars don't actually do that. She has this, if you watch any of her, stunt work reels, she has this incredible ability to throw her body through space and engage in all of these incredible stunts that most normal humans should not try at home or ever. So, and I think one of the most hopeful things about reading Glimmer is this idea that even people who are super, super, super successful, who are stars in their own right, have backstories, have origin stories, have terrible things that happen to them that they're overcoming. So if you feel so tainted by your own trauma, so broken, like you're the holder of a horrible secret, like you're just contaminated by everything that happened to you, and so many post-traumatic parents, we feel that way. For me, the fact that although I did CPR on my father when he was dying, I failed. I walked around with this persistent sense of failure in me, even with all my successes, my PhD, my postdoctoral work, my writing, all of my professional successes, any patient I've helped, any successful class I've done, any time I've spoken in a school and changed the social and emotional learning environment in that school, anytime I've helped someone transform their trauma into a superpower, I still walk around always feeling like failure. And I've been working on that in therapy. The fact that someone as brave and courageous as Kimberly, someone who literally can throw herself out of a window, right? Somebody who can literally, pretty much every fear people have, like people are afraid to fly on an airplane because what if they crash? She does that on purpose So she is so brave, and yet you read about her struggling with fear, struggling with her self-doubt, struggling to reconcile what happened to her to who she became. I think that's very validating for those of us on this journey to read her struggles, her self-doubt, her fear. In the book, she talks about meeting very famous stunt women and how starstruck she was. And it's kind of how I felt when I got to meet her, right? So that sensation, feeling starstruck but communicating with the person anyway, that's familiar to all of us. That's how we forge forward and we feel the fear and do it anyway. But some of the other things that Kimberly talks about in the book that are very important for post-traumatic parents to read and understand is she really describes beautifully the way body memory works. So people look at flashbacks and PTSD as though you're having a memory and you're feeling sensations in your body at the same time. What people don't realize is that a body memory is not you're having a memory, you're re-experiencing the sensations around the trauma right now in this moment. So if Kimberly was on a date and her date was starting to like get closer to her and it started feeling good, but then all of a sudden her body remembered how it felt when her grandfather was coming closer to her, she would have a panic attack. Not because she's remembering in the sense that I can, if you ask me, what did you eat for breakfast last Tuesday? I can remember and think, last Tuesday, where was I? What did I eat? Right? And I can do that. Her body was back there. Her body was a little 9-year-old being molested right then, even though she's a 25-year-old on a date. So just to understand the way body memories work, they're not just memories, they're actual re-experiences of the traumatic event. There's recent research that was published in the New York Times that showed that traumatic memories are not stored in memory areas of the brain. They're stored in the area of your brain that right now is experiencing a trauma that's occurring in the moment. So as if it's happening right now. It is happening right now because your neurology is telling you it's happening right now. She does such a beautiful job of really explaining what a body memory feels like. I know for me, I know what a body memory feels like. I know what flashbacks are. Sometimes it's hard to describe flashbacks to people who have never been traumatized. So sometimes when we're doing post-traumatic parenting and I'm talking to spouses and one of them has PTSD and one doesn't, trying to explain body memories to a person who has never experienced it is hard. This book does a great job of experiencing it. So many post-traumatic parents judge themselves. I know for myself, when this used to happen, I get very startled by sudden loud noises and by sudden loud touches, like by sudden touches. And I remember when I had very exuberant 4-year-old twin boys and they would come home from school and sometimes I'd be doing something in the kitchen and one of my trauma superpowers is dissociating. So I'd be very absorbed and I didn't realize they had come home and one of them would grab me around the waist or like they'd yell, "Mommy!" And I would go into a panic attack. I would go into a flashback. And there was a part of my brain that was judging me so much for these are your children. How could you be going into a flashback? How can your brain even perceive them as a threat for a second? But my body experiences sudden, loud noises as threatening because that's the way my body encoded those memories. So I think being able to read that and really stop judging yourself. I know for me, it was healing to read about Kimberly's body memories because, yeah, that's what a body memory really does feel like. And then throughout the book, Kimberly continues to progress in her journey. She starts understanding herself better. She starts getting therapy. I think key to her journey is her grandfather died. So he was no longer a threat. He couldn't actually physically assault her anymore. And this is when her mother began to be able to talk about her own assault on the part of her grandfather and Kimberly's assault. And the family was able to start healing. Now, there are members of Kimberly's family who are not comfortable with her telling the story. And I think that happens in certain types of toxic families that sometimes we do have, to quote the song, I do have to leave you to love me. Sometimes I do have to speak my truth, even if you're uncomfortable with my speaking of my truth. And those are painful, difficult decisions that every post-traumatic parent is going to come to and relate to slightly differently. Some people are going to go gray rock. Some people are going to not speak to family members who aren't comfortable with their decisions. Some people are going to speak to them in a limited basis. Some people are going to tell their own truth because that's how to reclaim voice and reclaim choice. That was the choice that Kimberly made. A lot of people ask Kimberly, and I saw this in the book, was alluded to in the book. I asked her a little bit about it in the interview, but I want to expand upon this a little bit more. What does it mean your mother didn't remember being assaulted by your grandfather? How is that possible? Like, what do you mean? How do you not remember that? But that's how trauma works. The trauma app in your brain, when you've been traumatized, your brain creates a trauma app to help you deal with it because trauma is too big for your brain to metabolize. Your brain just can't go there. So what trauma does, the trauma app is born and it creates a way for you to move forward. And sometimes that means editing it out of existence entirely. Think of like the Matrix, right? Where like it's just edited out of the code. It's not there. In the movie Wreck-It Ralph, there's an evil king who's trying to control the population. And the evil king locks the citizens of his games, of his world's memories away in a vault. And he literally takes their memories, the code that encodes their memories, and he locks it away. So you can't get rid of a memory entirely, but you can lock it away. When you can't get rid of a memory entirely, but it's locked away, it comes up as body reactions. It comes up as other psychological dysfunction. In Kimberly's mother's instance, it came up as perfectionism, and it came up with creating this perfect family facade because deep down, she probably felt very, very imperfect. So that's what a trauma app can do. It can literally lock memories away in a way that you can't access them. Her mother could not remember being assaulted. She loved her daughter. That was clear in the fact that her mother tried to repair the relationship and the fact of how her mother was trying to raise her as best she could with the tools she had, but they weren't very adequate at all because her mother was so traumatized. This is what happens when the trauma app interferes with our ability to parent our children. Her mother did not remember because that's what a trauma app can do. It can edit a giant occurrence out of your memory to the extent that it puts your children at risk. Her mother didn't remember. And that's the power of the trauma app. It can literally overwrite and rewrite reality. And it's very difficult to understand. Now, I'm not saying that I feel like as parents, we have the obligation to heal ourselves first, to break cycles before we pass them on. In that sense, as the parent, I do need to listen with that third ear. I do need to think, what is my kid not telling me? Why doesn't my daughter want to go to grandpa's house when it's such a fun place and she comes home with so many presents? What's that about? I think nowadays we have much more information about incest. We have much more information about molestation. And we also have information about mental health. We have information about trauma and how it works. So as cycle breaking parents, it's our obligation, if we don't have the tools from our childhood, to gain those tools through therapy, through journaling, through trusted friends who can help us, who are further along that journey than us. So I think we all, as post-traumatic parents, have to heal if we've acknowledged our trauma. But if you don't even know you were traumatized, how can you fix your trauma? And that is how powerful the trauma app is. And that's why we don't want a trauma app to start becoming installed in our children's brains. That's why we want to break the cycle now. Another, I think, really important thing that we can understand and learn from Kimberly's book is the way becoming a parent was both so empowering for her, and she really used her need to connect to her actual child to heal her inner child, but that was so not easy. When I read the chapter in the book where her OBGYN told her that because of the herpes your grandpa gave you, you are going to have a C-section. You cannot birth this baby naturally, and how sad she was, I cried with Kimberly, because parenting is such an embodied physical experience. And this was something she wanted to do. She wanted to give birth to her child. Now, of course, having a baby via C-section, as someone who has had babies via C-sections, is totally giving birth. Let's not minimize that. But she had a different vision of birth. She had a different goal in mind. She wanted something that was stolen from her. That choice was taken away from her. Now, sometimes that choice is taken away from us in all sorts of reasons. In my case, my baby's heart rate started to go down to the point where it wasn't safe and the doctor had to perform a C-section. Absolutely saved the baby at that moment. But did the birth match up to the birth I wanted? No. Does that mean that I don't have a wonderful attachment experience with my child who is now 10 years old? Of course I do. But it was a trauma. It was sad. For Kimberly, the fact that her grandfather gave her herpes, that ongoing legacy of what he did to her, now impacting her ability to stick to the birth plan that she wanted, that's sad. That's tragic. That's not fear on a deep, deep, deep level. I think one of the reasons why so many of us post-traumatic parents do tell our truth, are cycle breakers, do have a lot of courage, is because of it's not fear, and I'm going to restore justice to the world because I am going to make the world a little bit fairer. I can't make the world completely fair, but I can make this corner of the world a little bit more just. I can tell my story. I can reclaim my voice to give other women choice. And that is what is so beautiful about this book. This book is not an easy read. It is a fascinating read. It is the kind of book, I literally finished it in about a day because you can't put it down. The story is fascinating. It is extremely well written. She worked with a fantastic co-writer, Genevieve Field, who did a great job of really pulling Kimberly's voice out. And it's narratively structured beautifully. As someone who is writing a book, I can say that this book is constructed well. And it's also very, very educational because you can really see the impact of trauma on somebody's life. You can also see the way trauma is a superpower. You can see, and a superpower, here's the problem with a superpower. A superpower is very, very, very effective in the arena that you need it for. Kimberly not being afraid to hurt her body because as somebody who had been doing a lot of self-destructive things because of the hatred of her body and a hatred of physical sensations that being abused will give us, right? She wasn't afraid of physical pain. So she could throw herself through space, throw herself down a flight of stairs or through a plate glass window or, get beaten up on a runway or, fight with a sword or whatever else she needs to do, jump onto a motorcycle as it's moving and like speed through the streets because she's used to pain. Physical pain doesn't scare her anymore. But in every other context, that superpower it doesn't work. For me, dissociation is my superpower. I can concentrate and focus. The world could be burning around me. And if I'm reading a book, I won't know about it. I can write. I had multiple times when I wasn't as far along my post-traumatic parenting journey as I am now, when I was writing my dissertation and I sat down at my computer and I said, okay, worked a whole shift in the hospital, gave my kids dinner, did bedtime, playtime, bath time, all the stuff, did the homework. Now I'm going to sit down, I'll work on my dissertation until such time as I get tired and then I'll go to bed. And next thing I know, my kid is coming in to give me a good morning kiss because I never actually went to sleep because I was so dissociated from my body that I was working in this flow state. For a lot of people, getting into a flow state is really difficult. For me, getting out of one is really difficult. So it's a superpower. It's really bad for parenting though, because if I want to be present with my kids, I cannot dissociate. But my trauma app, at the first sign of stress, it tells me to dissociate. So I had to learn other less effective stress management tools besides dissociating. And this is how, yes, trauma gives us a superpower. Superpowers are bad things when it comes to living an ordinary life. And parenting's as ordinary and beautiful and routine. We want parenting to be ordinary, beautiful, that the beautiful, ordinary, everyday magic and miracle that is attachment, right? We want the ordinary. The superpower can actually interfere with that. So, and Kimberly does such a good job of really demonstrating that she has superpowers. She's an actual superhero. Like she is a superhero in the movies. And those superpowers also make it hard sometimes to live your life and be a parent. But Kimberly did such a good job of using her courage and using the experience of parenting her actual child to help heal her inner child. It is such a story of hope. It is such a story of courage. It is such a story that every post-traumatic parent, no matter what your trauma was, you're going to be able to relate to this book. Highly, highly recommend this book because of the courage it took to write it and how validating it is for those of us who read it. You're a post-traumatic parent and you love this kind of book review, Please click subscribe below so you never miss another video. And please check out the Post-Traumatic Parenting podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. If you wish there was more give and take, that's what Instagram's for. So check out at Dr. Kozlowitz Psychology on Instagram. That's where the post-traumatic parenting community hangs out. And I'd love to hear from you. Send me a DM, comment below with your questions, with suggestions of other books you'd like me to review, with your post-traumatic parenting and post-traumatic personing questions. And I'd be happy to answer them and shoot other videos. Till next time.